Let's look at the relationship of ground. And as we move into this next relationship, you'll notice on your cheat sheet that we're still under the category of subordinate relationships, but we're moving into a new category in terms of support by distinct statements over against what we've seen before with relationships like question and answer or idea explanation, where the support is found by a restatement of the proposition in a different way. With ground and with some of these other relationships to follow, we're moving into a different kind of support, a support by a distinct statement. So you have a proposition, and then you have a completely distinct proposition that supports that main proposition and receives the support of the subordinate proposition. The symbol for ground, you'll see, is simply the letter G. And the definition here is the relationship between a statement and the argument or reason for that statement. So the relationship between a statement, a proposition, a verbal assertion, and then the argument or the reason for the statement, the ground on which the main proposition is set or supported. Generally speaking, the conclusion comes first, the main point comes first, and the supporting proposition follows in the relationship of ground. And that's very important to identify ground as a relationship. Some of the key words you'll see for the relationship of ground are the words for, or because, or since. There may be other words that are translated, but those are the most common that you'll see. Words that signal purpose, not necessarily goal of function, especially in the use of the word for, but when there's a statement of purpose, where a proposition is given, and then the argument or the reason, the purpose for that statement is given. We're going to arc this by identifying the two relationships, the two propositions, and then identifying the ground proposition which supports the main proposition, and then we're going to draw an arc over the top of both of those arcs to say that these two propositions are in the relationship of ground. Let me give you an example of arcing the ground relationship. Okay, in Matthew 2:21, Joseph is visited by the angel and says to him, "Joseph, son of David, do not fear to take Mary as your wife, for that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit." So we've read over the passage. Now we need to start to divide out the propositions. And the first proposition I see here is, "Joseph, son of David, do not fear to take Mary as your wife." We have the subject who's being addressed, Joseph, son of David, and the verbal assertion, "Do not fear to what? To take Mary as your wife." And so this is the first proposition, and we run into the word for, which is our key word that we're looking for that signals the relationship of ground and connects to the second proposition, that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. Why does the angel exhort Joseph to not fear? For, or because, that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. Her pregnancy is a gift of the Spirit, is brought about by the Holy Spirit. So let's break these down into the two propositions so that we can arc these together. Joseph, son of David, do not fear to take Mary as your wife. For is our key word, that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. What threatened to be a scandal is actually a holy moment, a gift of historic proportions from the Holy Spirit. So let's label these now. We have verse 21, A and B. Draw our line and a proposition over each, or an arc over each proposition. And then we've already identified that our keyword is for, pointing us to the relationship of ground. And this second proposition is the ground on which the first proposition rests. The reason why the angel exhorts Joseph to not fear, to take Mary as his wife, is that that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. This is God's hand at work in his sovereignty. And so this is the ground on which this exhortation rests. It's the reason why Joseph is exhorted to this action. So we'll label the second proposition as the ground, and we'll draw one arc over both propositions to remind ourselves later that these two propositions exist in the relationship of ground. And this is an example of how we arc the relationship of ground.